In this video, I will be going over how I would read and break down this question or text here with the model reading, answering the question of why is the Reconstruction era so controversial? Because it definitely is. People disagree about like how we should remember this time period, what the story or lessons should be that we learn from this time period. So I'm going to be reading this paragraph here, but of course, just like you should probably go to the actual Google Doc to make things easier with the attached readings and vocabulary help. So again, I'm reading and looking for previewing the question first of why was the Reconstruction era so controversial? So I'm going to read this paragraph and break it down and show you how I would think about it. Perhaps one of the most enduring or lasting legacies of Reconstruction is its historiography, and this tells you what that means next. The very way that the history of the era has been remembered over the past 140 years. So it already tells me that the way we remember it has been kind of, not agreed on. As Southern states dismantled the interracial democracy of the Reconstruction era, history itself became one of the most powerful tools they used in justifying and establishing a racially segregated or separate society. So it was saying that at the end of Reconstruction, white supremacy kind of took hold again, and these interracial kind of like democracies where you'd have black legislatures together with white politicians working together started to be taken down and establishing a kind of segregated society like Jim Crow South that you probably have heard of. And they used this story of history to kind of justify or say what they were doing was right. So in the middle here, by the turn of the 20th century, a historical narrative or story about Reconstruction had emerged that Negro rule had ruined the South and that white supremacy and segregation were necessary to restore the noble society that white Southerners believed had existed before the Civil War. So they're kind of, from what I've seen here, thinking to myself, they're using this fake story saying that Negro rule, or an old-fashioned word for black people, had ruined the South, and that the failings of Reconstruction were because black people were bad, essentially, which is a racist lie. But they told this story to justify saying, well, this is why we have to keep them separated. This is why we can't be all together as one just equal people. And this last sentence here, that narrative dominated history books until the 1960s. And as a result, few other periods of American history have been as contested or fought over or misunderstood as Reconstruction. So kind of bringing this together, I'm seeing that, we see that Reconstruction fails, and that after Reconstruction, the kind of positive gains for African Americans are put down, the Jim Crow South is put in place, and essentially slavery by another name exists for another 100 years. But the racist and white supremacist created this false kind of like lie of history. The reason it failed was because just black people couldn't be trusted or were corrupt or ruined everything once they were given a chance to kind of make their own decisions. And so that was needed, apparently, according to this lie, to kind of put them back in their second class, less than human status so that, people that were racist could run the South once again. And they thought this was a good thing. So this really shows to me that it was controversial because they used this story, false narrative of history, to justify their racist actions, to say that what they were doing wasn't wrong, but was right because of this lie of history. And they wanted to, support this lie, so they created this bad history that supports racism. And of course, that's what I've not been telling you, that the Klan was horrible and wrong, and that the reason it failed was because of the violence and intimidation of the Klan, and a few other more detailed answers, but that's the basic one. So pay attention to the importance of stories and histories, and this gives you some background information on what you are going to be reading next as we see how this progresses into the future in the next 100 years after Reconstruction in our lesson today.